Hello, everyone. We have with us tonight Amirtha Kidambi, J.D. Allen, Fay Victor, Mixashawn Rozie, William Parker, and I'm Patricia Nicholson Parker. Thank you for being here, and we're going to start into this conversation that we think is very important, because what is more important than the world and how it's affecting us, and with all the social injustices rampant, with lies being interchanged with other facts in a random way. So many people have a trouble sorting it out. But we're going to do what we can to sort out things that are dealing with how we are in our communities dealing with racism. So I'm going to ask you in any order. I guess start with Amirtha, and then JD, then Lee, and then William, then Fay. So the first question that I posed is, what are we artists? This is the simpler one. What are we artists already doing to respond to the social unrest? And what do we think we should be doing? But maybe a little preamble to that should be, what does that mean? What are we talking about? So speak a little bit about what you think we're talking about. What is this social unrest? And then what are we doing? What are we doing now, and what should we be doing as a community? Not what other people should be doing, but what should we be doing?
I like that you said this is a simple, simple question. This is I think it's a really complex question. I mean, in terms of when I think of this particular reckoning and why it maybe feels different than some of the things that have come before. I mean, I've existed in this country for 34 years, and so there's a lot I haven't seen. There's some things I have seen, and I think this particular reckoning, to me, seems much more about the systems than we've ever seen before, which I think is a good thing. And there's even things that I grew up really not understanding. Particularly, I'm brown, but I'm not Black, and that it's a very different positioning to grow up as an South Asian American in this country. So there's a lot of thinking that I've been doing along those lines as all of this has gone on, and sort of the privilege of that, and sort of the inherent anti-Blackness in my own community, and sort of grappling with that. In terms of art and artists, I think, one, we're doing what we've always done, even under the circumstances, which is we respond and we express. And that there was, some periods this summer where I thought, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, what we do as musicians doesn't matter. We just got to be out in the streets. And so I turned my attention to that and doing organizing. But then, as we were able to come back to music a little bit, I said, no, it does matter, and it has always mattered, that expression. The thing I think we should do, I think, is much more complicated, which is, I think, in our own communities, in our arts organizations, in our arts education systems, like universities, schools, even in elementary education. In all of these, I've worked on the administration side of nonprofits also. And I think in all of these institutions, what they have in common is that they are built on this white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal power structure. White supremacy and capitalism and patriarchy being totally tied. I think bell hooks really, that's the mantra for me. And we gotta do that in our own communities. I think, like, to me, the lesson is sort of start with yourself, and then you reverberate out into your community, and we have power to actually change these structures in our own artist community, I think. And when you look at the big thing, it's very, very daunting, but hopefully we can do it amongst ourselves. So I don't know. That's a bit meandering, but it's a lot. So there's a lot in that question, I think.
Well, yeah. I want to just reiterate so I make sure I understand what you're saying, and you can then maybe it'll help other people. So what you're saying is that, oh, you said a lot of things. You're saying that, well, at first you felt like the only thing that felt real was to be in the street and protesting, but then you you began to remember yourself as an artist. Now I'm putting my word.
Yeah, that's.
And that is its own important voicing. And then you're also talking about stuff that I thought was really important. That was, it's this understanding of how everything is intertwined, our who we are as human, as our, coming from our different backgrounds, who we are as the privilege and not privilege of our, of our unique backgrounds, and understanding that this is, there's a lot wrong. So where's your optimism in this? Because you kind of expressed it, optimism, but I didn't quite get that part.
My optimism is that I think, one, we always have the power to do something in ourselves. So I'm grateful. Right. Actually, I'm grateful that we haven't been playing concerts all the time during this, because then I can go inward. That was a big thing this summer for me, is really, really look inside, talk to my family, have lots of conversations with them, and really, really think about sort of my own positionality in all of this. And then the optimism for me is that I think within our own communities, it's like if we look at the federal government, we might get very, very discouraged. But if we look at, roulette and Arts for Arts, or, the new school or something, maybe there are things we can do in these arenas that we really have a little bit more power to change things. That's my optimism, I guess.
It's great. All right, JD.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I think the timeline needs to be adjusted. This is a situation that as far as I know, and in my short summers of living, this conversation has been going on all my life. And I think that people who are waking up to this need to realize that this is a timeline that's been going on for 401 years, first of all. Second of all, I think that it's important to understand that when a new normal comes back, the world that we thought was a good time and a place where there were advancements that were happening, that's not going to happen again, because actually we're in the third Reconstruction period of this country. The third Reconstruction. That's something that has to be understood. Second, that was the first. I think as artists, musicians, writers, creative thinkers, first of all, we need to set aside ideology and put culture in the forefront and unite and form alliances across the globe, not just in New York, not just in California, not just in Ohio or Chicago, but the globe, because we have technology on our side, and we can have these conversations, and these conversations are being had, and we can form alliances where when the new normal comes back into position, well, there will be an infrastructure in place where we will be in control of their spaces, because waiting on whoever wins this election, be it conservatives, Republicans, or moderate Democrats, or less we do. So that's my optimism, so that's where I stand.
You distorted at the very end.
Oh, okay, I can repeat it, no problem.
Yeah.
I'll repeat it, no problem. Sorry about that. My Wi-Fi gets tricky, awful, like Wi-Fi. But depending on who wins this election, be it conservatives, Republicans, or moderate Democrats, or corporate Democrats, no one is going to give us anything because art is disposable in this culture. So we have to form our own infrastructure and infrastructures globally and unite and decide as a block, what are we going to do? That's the positive aspect of what I think.
Well, I want to throw I'm going to throw that.
Oh yeah, okay. I don't know why it's funny. I think it's
No,
something
I'm
that's
not
achievable.
smiling. Oh, wait.
Okay.
I wasn't, no. Don't misunderstand my smile.
Okay, all right.
I'm a
It's
smiler.
achievable, you know. It's
No, it
certainly
is achievable, but wait. I would like to point out something to you.
Sure.
And that is, all right. I'm inserting myself in this conversation.
Oh, go ahead. No, hey, I'm here to learn.
Right. When the reason why you have to look at why is this music more coming from Europe than from America. It came out of certain communities. Why isn't it there? I'm going to give you my opinion or my insight into that. And I think it's because one made money by going to Europe. So that's where all the music was going, away from the communities and into Europe. At the same time, communities were being destroyed in America by the way they tore down neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. So places of all the clubs, closed places of gathering disappeared. And all the money was to be made somewhere else far away.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that would be the thorn in the side of that good idea.
No, well, the good idea is that Africa is making a lot of ground now. Albeit China is putting its money in Africa, that's a whole nother situation. But Africa is the largest continent on this planet. It's true.
Right.
It's very true.
Yeah,
Ghana just announced last year the great return. And the amount of money that Ghana made from us going there and visiting was a lot. So there are conversations right now that are happening with two countries in Africa, and that possibility. I'm just saying that it's a bigger world than even just music. That's why I said put ideology to the side and more of a cultural significance and what you can provide to your community. You know, because we can get into you play this, I play this, but really we all play 12 notes. So, you know.
Yeah. Fay, I think I changed the order because you look different on my screen. You came up next. So you're next for me.
I was muted. No, I was muted. I'm going to talk about myself. I'm going to be personal.
Okay.
Because I just think that's, so what we can do as artists, is somebody playing something?
Oh, I thought my mute was on. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, for me, I'm just gonna sort of piggyback a little bit something on J.D. Allen said. I mean, this is what we're experiencing now is nothing new. Like it's just nothing new. It has another face. It has another dynamic. It's representative of the technologies that are available today, that are accessed for but for this particular movement, but. The fact that this is a white supremacist society and has been since its beginning is that's just what it is. So, and the intention is for it to stay that way. That's why all this stuff is happening now. The intention is for it to literally stay that way, regardless of when the white population becomes a minority. So that's super clear. So that's the deal. So, and I, I'm not really, and maybe I don't know what I've been sort of struggling with what to call is nationalist. I mean, I'm American, um, but I also have roots in the Caribbean and South America. I don't really feel super connected to any one specific country, and I think so. I really sort of feel with JD out this whole idea of like, um, we don't need to stay here. Personally, we don't. Um, but that aside, I think for me, what has been really frustrating for me is to see how a lot of people have woken up all of a sudden, and then which is a tendency with a lot of white people. I just need to say it like that.
Yeah.
When a white person wakes up, it's like everything is new to them, so it's gets this really interesting dynamic, and that I actually have problems with, because I'll be really honest. When Trump got elected, um, and people were shocked about that, that infuriated me
Me too.
because I wanted to know where did people think they were living, like what, and everybody focuses on the 3 million, the Hillary Clinton, but 62 million people still voted for him. Like I think about that. That's what I think about. 62 million people voted for him, right? So that's just what's up. That's real. So what we can figure out what we can do, but I think one of the first things we need to do is stop wanting anybody to like us and stop feeling that anybody's going to give us absolutely anything. That's really, we have to love ourselves and figure out for ourselves what we need to do, because one of the big things I get frustrated with is this: every time there's something horrible that happens to somebody in our community, whether it's a police killing, it seems to be this desire for people to stop doing it because so they can because um, I guess the hard thing is like, I don't think you can ask people to see you as human if they simply don't. Right? If someone simply does not see you as human, you can ask them. Of course, you can try, but you might literally die trying. You know. So I think we have to just decide that we are human and as worthy as anything else as anybody else. I think that's first and foremost, and that's an internal work we all have to do, and be proud of whatever we are, whoever we are, wherever we're from. I don't want to. So one of the things I've done is I've started a solo project called Black is Beautiful, and that project is focused on what is beautiful about the Black experience. And I come at it from a lot of different angles, but I wanted to talk about that, because in all the pain, what I'm hearing is this pain of not feeling loved enough, not feeling appreciated enough, not feeling valued enough from other people. And we have to value ourselves. So I want to focus and talk about what is beautiful about us. And that's one of the things I've been doing. What I've been doing in terms of, in a political sense, is sort of behind the scenes, is talking a lot about education. I've been doing this for months already, sort of talking with people, educators in Europe, educators around the fact that their Black history is erased from the education of this music. And Jay, we didn't even get to really talk about that, but yeah, this is work I've been doing, not because it has to be done, and for whatever reason, I've been put in a position where I can talk to certain people, and so I've been talking. And so that's where I'm at with all of this.
Thank you. Mixashawn.
Yes. Well, I gotta say, like, what I've been doing in my community is similar to what Fay was saying. Not so much behind the scenes, although I am behind the scenes, and I have been talking to more educators and arts. I guess you could call them arts politicians, which every community has them. And you know, like this Indigenous Peoples Day, you know, we're talking about white supremacy. The 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 um, the anniversary of Columbus coming over here is the start and the birth of white supremacy. And even before Europe, because before Columbus came here and before Europeans started settling here, there was no real concept of being white. There was concept of being German, Dutch, English, but not white. And coming here into the Americas, it's, really, and that date, I think is very important. So what I've been doing is not just talking to the arts politicians, but in presentations I've been doing to young people, and when I get a chance to be around them and speak with them, is, you know, really just give them a sense of what that really means. Because when you come, you have a foreign person come into a place and say they've discovered someone, that's, I mean, that's the epitome of arrogance. And we just mentioned, oh, Columbus Day, like it's no big thing. And it really is a big thing, because that's the birth of all of this. That's what started all the troubles here and really around the world, because, you know, it affected all the continents. It affected Africa with increased slavery going on and shipping people over here. It affected Asia when there was more resources for colonists to expand their expansion. So I guess what I'd say is, and at this age, especially at my age, I've seen, you know, we're talking about, you know, this current unrest that's going on. This is a replay of 1969, as I remember it. And I don't want to be negative about it, but at the same time, very much what Fay was saying is like, I hope it doesn't turn out the way 1969 did in 1970 and you know, going forward. But I know that's a possibility. And how do you deal with that possibility? And it's going back to JD's talking about cultural roots. The cultural roots, this is something our ancestors went through. And, you know, my parents and those who came before them went through much harder things than I'm going through. This, although it can be, it is dangerous for sure, but at the same time, I know it's not as bad as it was. And I'm not saying that, oh, things are getting better, just for the simple fact that, you know, there's more technology, there's more people, and the situation, even though the power structure hasn't really shifted, but the population has shifted. And, you know, we're at a time now when it really is a battle for our minds. So that's why I said, you know, Columbus Day, and, you know, renamed made into Indigenous Peoples Day, is something that to me is very important. And I've been working here in my community in raising people's consciousness about that, especially young people.
Thank you, Mixashawn Rozie. William Parker.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there are several things we have to remember, is that the ruling people, or the people who've done the imperialism and who set the standard of what is right and wrong, what is human and what is not human, they don't know what human is. They have no idea what human is. If they were human, it wouldn't be like this. So if we look at them as an example of how to live, that's wrong. And you know, I mean, that they failed. They failed from the beginning, and they're failing now, and they'll probably keep on failing. we as artists, we've always realized that the grass is not greener on the other side. It's green where we're standing and what we do. We've already gone to a higher, we've already dealing with a higher consciousness of feeling, of thinking. And we do that through our art and through our music. And once we become enlightened in that area, then we see that this is, I mean, it's never gotten any better. I mean, it's just the same thing repeated, because you're dealing with evil, you're dealing with bad spirits. You're dealing with bad spirits and who don't know anything about laws, who don't know anything about nature. They've destroyed the planet. They're just fixated on making money. And so art is about the opposite. We're about finding where the light is and leading the people to the light that's inside them and the light that's in the earth around them. And that's where I think the salvation is for people to go, is they got to find their inner light, and they got to go where wherever that is and develop that, because I mean, you can't get you know, I mean, this America's is not, I mean, you need a whole revolution, a whole mindset. And the idea, you know, you say, well, okay, what happened in the 60s is all the hip people were going to Woodstock to do beads and make music. And they left the government in the hands of these people wearing penguin suits. And they made a deal with the businessmen wearing penguin suits. And then things went way downhill from there. I mean, if we had had one hip president, you know, one hip president that would have, you know, I mean, you know, yeah, like Jimi Hendrix for president. You know, I mean, you know, well, and that's the thing, you know, if John Coltrane for president, you know, shoot, things would have been different. And so now what we're left with is like, we're left with like some rotten things that are rotten to the core that we just have to just leave alone. And we have to just find our inner core and then see what we're going to do with our art and with the people who are hip. You know, I mean, if we could get our own island, our own country, I say, let's all go live there. I mean, how long do you live? You know, it's like you're pushing 70 now, and then it's like, okay, what can you? There's some of us who are pushing 70, and some of us
are.
Yes, who hit it. So it's like, you know, I mean, so what can you do in those? You don't know. You got 10 years, 15 years, so you're going to try to change Republicans and have Democrats? No. We got to go a whole other way, you know, because you already have the beautiful music. So why worry about Republicans and Democrats? Yeah.
William Parker for president, maybe.
All right. I'm just gonna throw in a quick question, just to because it reflects on what y'all have been talking about, and it's about artist truth telling in a time of lies. Any comments on that? Or truth telling? Forget about art. Truth telling in a time of lies. Does that work for anybody here?
No, I mean, if you tell the truth, you tell the truth, regardless of what other people are doing. That's how I feel about it. If you're about telling the truth, you're about telling the truth. What other people got to do? You know, it's what. I mean, that the person in the White House is a pathological liar. You know, that's him. But you know, that doesn't. I mean, I guess maybe the thing to say to that is, why would the fact that a bunch of people are lying and maybe seeming like they're getting away with it, why would that alter what you do if you intrinsically think it's wrong?
Wow. Well, I think that, you know, in terms of telling the truth, it's especially important to tell the truth to young people, because people, once they get over a certain age, you can tell them anything you want and they're not going to listen to it because they're already set in their ways. But I'll give you an example. Like one of my kids, grandkids, they're talking, oh, we're going to vote for Kanye West. I was like, what? And that's, and I said, that makes no sense at all. Why are you going to, and really engage with them and talk to them about it. And, thank God, I made some sense to them. And then when, he started really acting crazy, they did realize that. But, and not just my kids, young people in general, it's so important to tell the truth to young people, because that's all they do is hear lies. That's one reason I'm not working in the public education system, because it's a hideous lie that the public education system is preparing kids for all the hell that's going on now, penitentiaries, wage slavery, and sloth, because and that's a part of it too, because kids are addicted to these telephones. It's like they're on crack, so
I think talk is cheap.
Talk is cheap?
Yeah, we talk too much. We talk too much. We go to these young people, it's talk. We got to do now. We know what right, I mean, you're not going to convince an adult to do the right thing. At a certain age, you are, unless you're a reflective person, and there's not many of those type of adults around. Talk is cheap. We talk all the time. We've been talking for years and years and years, and that's what these young people see, us talking. Enough talking. We got to do. We have to there has to be a sacrifice in terms of your time and the all likelihood of not making some money on something and being a force for good and nutritional value to a community. That's not something you get rich on.
Right.
Talk is cheap. Nancy Pelosi and all of them, they tell us, we all know that guy is wrong, but we can't get that guy out of there, and we're all afraid that he won't leave. Some people are not talking, they just doing it. So that's, so when you say tell the truth to who? And if we do have the opportunity to tell the truth, is it getting to the people that need to hear it? Or is the depth frequencies overtaking them where they can't hear it? So in that case, if they can't hear it, you got to show people. Talk is cheap.
No, it is. It is.
I'd like to say something to that, though, JD. I think you raised a good point. Talk is cheap, but I think if you want to say something that's truthful, from an artistic point of view, I think it's a cool thing to experiment how you can communicate that so that people hear what you're trying to say. I mean,
well, let's look at Paul Robeson. I mean, one of the first black superstars in the world. He was inspired by the Welsh miners. And he did his art to the best. Not only art, law, sports. This guy was a Renaissance person. But his art got him to a table to where he put his mouth where his money was. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't tell the truth or don't sing and hold hands and say we shall overcome. But at a certain point, we have to be willing to make a sacrifice of our time and the likelihood of not getting paid for the benefit of a community. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying let's don't tell the truth. But we can tell the truth to people that they know deep down inside, they know what's right and wrong. They know, they know,
I just to respond to what JD is saying, because I'm getting it. I'm liking it. I'm learning it. It's kind of like there's lying, there's degrees, right? So there's lying and then there's silence. And I think silence is just as bad. A lot of people have been operating under the cover of silence, and that's where in situations of power, and particularly and this is where I think money is so tied to this, and capitalism is, especially inside of institutions, I've been behind doors where there's these power structures, and nobody, you know, all these very good people are not necessarily lying, but they're not saying anything, or they're not, you know, speaking truth to power. And for the reason that I think for a lot of people that happens is, let's say musicians, for example, just because we're all musicians, is what happens if I speak out against this thing? Will I get another gig from them? Or if I'm in a unit, I had a situation in university, I got fired from the very university that Fay is at. And there's power structures. And if you start to push against certain things and in certain ways, there are consequences. And like you say, you have to be willing. And it's a scary thing, especially if you're a young musician, or you're coming up in your career, or whatever it is, to make that sacrifice and say, you know what, no, this cannot stand. This can no longer stand. And we have to also have each other's backs on it. You know, if one person is doing, this is where I think collectivity is so crucial. And why, when I was a young person, and I guess I'm youngish still, but when I first came across the AACM and that concept, you know, because a lot of as an artist, like the examples I saw were these monoliths, like this single person, you know, John Coltrane. And they're great. I never heard Alice's name until later. That's a whole other problem. But they're these monolithic individuals. You know, they overcame all these things through their sheer might and will. And of course, that's true in some sense. But what struck me about the AACM, and what just completely blew me away, was the collective aspect, that they had a common goal, that it was very clear, and you know, and we could, I'm sure there's critiques of the AACM, but for me, what really struck me was we're all operating on this model of scarcity, and that's why we're so scared to speak up, because you think, oh, well, will I have this if I say this? And I feel like operating on the model of abundance, even if it's not true, assuming things will happen, having each other's backs, having transparency, speaking out for each other. This kind of model, and of course it was modeled on the Black Panthers, and that is such a lesson. Like, to me, as a musician, the first place I'm looking right now is to the organizers, to the grassroots organizers, and to the political organizers. They are a great model for us in how to operate and how to activate. And I think one of the big problems for us is capitalism has forced so many of us to, you know, be in competition in a way that it is just, to me, excuse my language, is just complete bullshit. You know, there is abundance, there's enough to go around. And if we can remember that and support each other, we can speak truth to power and call the devil, the white devil, or whoever it is, call it what it is, and say it without fear. Because there's, you know, I've sat in meetings where it's just at the tip of your tongue, but you're just like, instead it just is this eternal eye roll into the back of my head. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to listen to some pontificating executive director or dean or something and have the silent eye roll and connect with the one other person of color on the other side of the room and look at each other like this. I want to be able to say, we are both going to stand up together and say something, because this is bullshit, you know? So I think silence is just as bad as lying. But I think part of that silence is fear. And I think the more, I mean, you know, easier said than done. I know we're all in different positions. We all can't just say, fuck it, I'm just, you know, not going to make money. I understand that we have to live, but
nobody's making money right now.
Exactly. That's actually an interesting.
That's not true. That's actually.
Oh, well, somebody making some money. I'm saying in terms of, not to hijack the conversation. I'm just saying, like, the thing that I never got to say what I was happy about, I'm happy that I can speak up because I know that the power structures that be really, really want to be on the right side of history. So this is our opportunity to do a lot of things because it's gonna shut down somehow, some way. So I'm running my mouth like never before because I too was afraid to say a lot of things.
Yes,
And I didn't say things.
I'd like to say
and
something to what Amirtha
go ahead,
said as
sis.
well, because that's funny. It's something actually that I'll mention because I think everyone knows Darius here. Something Darius I've been talking about a lot is that we need to stop that. Seriously, we need to stop, like, we need to speak up. I mean, I've been talking. I by nature, I have always spoken up. So but I know not everybody's like me, and not everybody can do that. And even if I had no money, I've spoken up because I'm just that kind of person. Like if it hits me in a certain way, I just can't. Somebody just can't help myself. But through doing that, I've also learned the power of that, and people never see it coming, and so it's also like in an interesting way, it's kind of like it puts them off guard, and I've had amazing conversations and developed amazing relationships with people that I've actually sort of spoken up in situations where maybe people, what the hell? So, but I think especially in this time, like we have to stop that. We have to stop like we own who we are, and maybe you'll lose that gig. Maybe you'll lose that gig, and sometimes you have to say, what, you know what? I'm gonna lose that gig, but then you'll have it's really complicated, but I think we really have to sort of own what we want to do, and even if it means that we're going to come in contact with people that are going to say the shit that they're going to probably say, we just have to be able to say, like I'll give a really small example. This was years ago when I was living in Europe. I did a gig in a little club in Brussels, and I did a gig. The first gig was under I was just sort of a side man. Somebody hired me, and it was a kind of a straight ahead gig, but it was a good club. And anyway, I had a CD, and I gave the guy the CD, and I said I would like to bring my own band, and he said sure. He said I'll listen to your music, you bring your own band. We made a deal. I brought my band. My band was very different from the band that he heard me sit in with, but the band I brought was reflective of what was on the CD. Anyway, long story short, he was really not happy with that gig, and he basically sat me down, and he's like, if you can never come to my club again playing this music. And the audience liked the gig and everything. And he said, you can never come to my club again. When you did that first gig, that was cool. I said, well, listen, I gave you my music, and so if you didn't listen to it, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, you can't come. I said, well, you know what? You're not paying me enough to come here to play anything but my music. So I guess I will not have this gig again. And I really feel good that I said that to him, because I felt like, this is really not all. So it was disrespectful on all sorts of matters, all sorts of levels, because the audience really enjoyed the music, and he literally said, he goes, I don't care if the audience enjoyed your music. He said, I don't care. It's my club. I want what I want. I said, okay, well then you're not paying me enough to come and do what you want. And that was the end of that. And so that's just one little fight, but it really felt good to be able to say that to him. It really felt good to be able to say that to him. And the gig was like 600 euros for like a band, like coming from Amsterdam. Like this, it was nothing. So that's what I'm saying. So like, why would I like just be okay for 600 euros? That's when I really like calculated what the actual dollar amount was. It's not worth it. And I told him that to his face. So, and that's what we have to do. And I don't care. And I didn't need his gig. And I've been doing very well without that gig. Right? So that's my,
Yeah, absolutely. But there also has to, and I think, like,
you have to pick your battles. I know that.
Exactly.
You got to pick your battles.
And the stamina.
And you have to, and the timing has to be right. Sometimes you have to pull people to the side, whatever. But the point is,
because I've had that experience both ways.
I don't want to get into my whole thing, but I've literally pulled people I worked for into conference rooms to say to them, we need to talk. That's how I roll. I don't know everybody can do that, But from doing that, I've learned like how much people respect you for that shit. Like it's deep. Like this, like I've been in jobs. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna lose the fucking job, and then I do that, and it's cool. It's amazing. But again, I know everybody.
I've also done that and lost the job.
No,
so sometimes it happens. But I'm happy for that. I'm happy.
Exactly, and that's the point. It's like you have your dignity, and you feel like right. You feel good about that, And that's like that whole silence thing. So I totally agree. But we have to like. This goes back by saying, love ourselves enough to be able to stand up and say, okay, but I know it was a panel. You know where I was going.
Well, the thing that,
maybe we should raise hands now when we want.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, and I did cut you off. Sorry, but I had to. But the person was like,
say that when you make one sacrifice, the first sacrifice you may notice, the second sacrifice you may notice a little less, and then the more sacrifices you make, you're not even aware that you're making sacrifices. And so we will always have to stay on top of our where we are in the society. I mean, when I was a kid living in the Bronx, the first thing I noticed, one of the first things, is that every other corner there was a liquor store. And I'm saying, wow, every corner there's a liquor store, and then there were not black-owned liquor stores. Somebody else was in there owning the liquor stores. There was no black-owned grocery stores. There was very little black-owned anything. So I'm saying like what do black people do? And then you go to the barbershop, and there were always guys in the barbershop that didn't work, but they pull out this wad of money, and they're gonna buy everybody lunch. They're gonna buy everybody lunch, and they get out. They had a nice car, so it's like you begin to see that. Okay, what are we doing? What are we doing? In the 70s, we talked about when we were doing the individual, these little festivals in the early 70s with Billy Bang, and like in the Lower East Side, there was no black-owned business. There's no black-owned laundromat, no black-owned anything. So I just said, like, so what are we doing? And that was always the question: what are we doing?
Well, you did mention the festivals. Why don't you let people know what you're talking about?
Well, it was the self-determination festivals that we did. I mean, we meaning Billy Bang, myself, later on, Butch Morris, Jamil Moondock was in there. And there were musicians run the Lower East Side Music Festival where we get together, we get a space, and we book ourselves. And it was about self-determination. Eventually, it led up to the Sound Unity Festival, where we actually called down Bill Dixon, who had done the October Revolution, and talked about, our motto was to get out of the give me a gig mentality. It's not about giving me a gig, it's about create your own gig and be in control of what you do, and create, where's our magazine? Where's our cultural centers? What are we doing? And so that was always the question, what are we doing? And then by 1978, 79, everybody was beginning to go overseas. You played at Tin Palace, and as a reward for playing at Tin Palace, I'm not going to name any names to keep everything clean, you played a public theater. Now somebody married somebody to hook that up, and then you'd go from the public theater, you go to Europe. And you get to Europe, and people were going to Europe, and they were making records for $300 per band just to get on red records or round records. And these are established names, I won't name any names. But some of them, a lot of them are dead, some of them are still alive. So it was America was underdeveloped and stayed underdeveloped because we left for Europe. Because the biggest name from Miles Davis to the person that had no name wanted to go to Europe because that's where the money was. And we didn't stay in our own neighborhoods. We didn't develop our storefront churches, our storefront, little venues. We didn't mentor our young people and say, talk is cheap. But if you mentor somebody and spend some time every week with a young person, they'll eventually get it that you're real and what you're doing is real.
That's very true. Yeah.
Well, it's not talk if you spend that.
Mixashawn's been waiting to talk.
Oh, okay. I thought you said raise your hand.
Right.
Okay,
well,
go ahead, Mixashawn.
no, yeah. Well,
Sorry,
the thing is, I understand. We talk about sacrifice, and I get that. I can't even tell you how many gigs I've lost, even just by the way I wear my hair. It doesn't, it's even just sometimes just people just look at you because I live in a very conservative place, and I think one of the things we talk about, we have to sacrifice some things. You're going to sacrifice gigs. That happens all the time. And what William was talking about in New York, that's one reason why I left New York, because, I saw that was the model. You go to Europe, be underpaid, and get a cocaine habit, and that's it. But not everybody goes that way, but, that was quite prevalent. So, when I went back to Connecticut, and the good thing about being in Connecticut is close to New York and Boston, so that was a lot easier to take than if I lived in Arkansas. But I got involved in things, and it's like when I'm talking to young people, I'm talking about things that I experienced, things that I've lived, and when you do talk to young people, if you're really backing up with what you're saying with action. That's like I was talking earlier. I had to leave the public educational system because I would be getting to I won't say arguments, but disagreements with the teachers when they start pumping all that hysterical bullshit into kids' minds. And when we talk about sacrifice, what are we prepared to sacrifice? I'm not just talking about a gig now. Are you prepared to sacrifice your life? Because that's real. I know this because I've been against the police with guns and in situations like that, standing up for rights, like JD, and that reservation that you've been on. Yeah. The only reason it's there because we had to stand up with guns and say, no, hell no, you're not coming in there.
I mean, we
no,
family,
so what I'm
Sean,
saying,
so
here's the thing of what I'm saying. It's like, right now, you heard what happened in Michigan today, right?
Yeah.
Well, that white supremacists actually had a plot that was foiled by the FBI where they're going to kidnap the governor and start a civil war. We're at the point now, we have to realize, it's like, it's beyond, just, people are talking crazy. They're getting ready to do action. And right now, we better be prepared for that. I mean, yeah, okay, people don't want to vote. I'm going to vote, and I think it's important to vote. But not more important, but just as important, is people have gun licenses. Do people have ways that where they're going to withstand what's coming down? Because it's pretty clear that this election that's coming up, it's a very good possibility that this could be the start of the second Civil War. I mean, that's real. We have to face those things. And I hope it doesn't happen, but it's real. And, it's like talking to, especially young people, at least get them to think beyond their cell phones and beyond, the cyberspace they're lost in. I think that's going to be invaluable, because I see it all the time. Because I live in the community where I was teaching and where I still teach, and I see kids all the time that when you talk to them, they remember what you were saying to them, and they see by your actions you're still there and you're still doing what you're talking about. So talk is cheap. You're right. Talk is cheap, but it's you can be cracking, but you got to be backing.
I'd like to first of all, I'm not from the Bronx, but I'm from Detroit, Michigan, east side of Detroit, Mack Avenue. Where I grew up, there was a liquor store and a church right next to it. So you got your spirits one way or the other.
Right.
Now, when I say talk is cheap, what I mean by that, I need to clarify, because I don't want to say that anything that you've done for your community and the positions that you represent within your community, I'm not saying that that's of no value, because everything you've said, both Mixashawn and William, you've actually took your body and talked to youth. That's an action. What I mean by talk is cheap is people getting together and just having conversations and practicing theory and not actually playing their instruments. That's talk is cheap. That's what I mean by talk is cheap. Now, I grew up in a very hard situation. I'm probably the classic I was the classic young black angry person in America. The side of town where I grew up is where the '67 riots happened. They didn't fix that area. That's what I came up in, but that don't make me a tough guy. What I'm saying is everyone was a participant in me playing that horn. From the bus driver to the mailman to Mrs. Smith across the street. When they realized that I was doing something other than rolling, which means selling drugs, or hitting somebody up on the head and I had a horn in my hand, that was more than talk. That was an actual mentorship. That's what I'm saying. On a micro level, as creative thinkers, I think that we can go into these communities, and offer our services and bring nutritional value to people that look like us. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm saying all the theoretical talk about what's going to make white people love us, what's going to get liberal Americans, what's they going to give us some money so we can do this. We don't need that, because obviously capitalism is in trouble. So that's what I'm saying. It's going to be a sacrifice that might have to happen, where it's not a monetary value, but the moral high ground is taking place. That's what I'm talking. That's what I mean by talk is cheap. It's not saying talking to youth, because people talk to me. They talk me out of going into the penitentiary. They talk me out of a lot of situations. Talk works. Being there, being active, sharing the art of creativity in these communities. That's what I mean by that goes beyond the theoretical aspect of having these conversations, which I love. But, you know, it happens a lot. So talk is cheap. That's what I meant by that statement. I wasn't trying to disrespect anyone's standing in their community. I know who everyone is on this panel, and I respect you. I've respected you ever since I came to New York in 1993. You know, I know who everybody is. Mixashawn is almost my cousin. I know where you come from. I know what you dealt with. We've talked about this. But talk is cheap if we're not getting into these communities and being a part of them. Because let's be honest, in the next 15 to 20 years, there will not be black kids playing this music, whether it's avant-garde, straight ahead, or anything, if we don't become active and don't wait for these institutions to give us the money. We gotta fight for them. We gotta be there for them. That means to go into these places and make ourselves known. Meet your community organizer, go to your police state, whatever we got to do it, because we're not gonna be here in 20 years. That's what I mean, talk is cheap. That's what I'm talking about. We can talk all day about what they've done to us, and but what does it do? So talk is cheap. That's what I meant. You know, so I just wanted to clarify that. I don't want to disrespect nobody, you know.
Thank you. That was great.
I just had a thought based on what JD and William, and actually what everybody's saying, of sort of this reliance on, like, the Self-Determination Festival. Just that idea is so powerful. The reliance on institutions. So if all these institutions are rotten to their core, these institutions are part of a system that is white supremacist, that is capitalist. If all the institutions are rotten to their core, there's different paths. You can reform the institution. We've been trying to do those things. We can keep trying, but the other option is to just do it yourself, DIY. I mean, one of the things I loved about why I came to New York in the first place, I lived in Los Angeles, was because it was a kind of more rock scene that I was involved with, but it was called DIY, do it yourself. And what was very appealing about that was that you don't have to wait for some institution to give you money, and you just do it yourself. That scene had many, many issues. It was very white, and it's something I would want to rebuild in a completely different image. But what is liberating about that is then you can maintain your value system and maintain your core. And I think the thing to add to that is not just having festivals and just having shows and booking your bands, but doing this educational work and actually, because I look at my generation in New York and it's very monochrome, like the 30s and people in their 30s and 20s in a sort of avant-garde. I can't, because we're very sectioned off. I hate that about the New York scene in many ways, but in sort of the avant-garde, there's a lot of, in my generation and younger, it's not as reflective of the history of this music as, you know, that I think it should be. And I think about why that is, sort of the access to learning about it, the access to the education. You know, not everybody has those pathways. And so you keep getting sort of wider and wider jazz schools, and you keep getting, you know, the younger generations, like you say, will in 10 or 15 years, will you see a young Black child pick up a horn? I don't know. I mean, not unless we actually actively make access to the arts available. And for me, it was just by chance. I went to public school in the Bay Area, and I happened to have this music teacher in elementary school who talked about Duke Ellington and Beethoven in the same breath. She was white, and she really understood something deep. She taught us spirituals in school. She said, "This is American folk music." I was like, that's when I was 5 years old when I heard that, and it stuck with me forever. But that was luck. It was pure luck. Totally underfunded California public school system. Pure luck. It shouldn't just be luck, right? It should be a priority. And as musicians, I think that's a question I'm asking is how do we actively involve ourselves? We're all just, if we're all on tour all the time, like William said, if we're all going to Europe all the time and we're never here actually amongst our neighbors, like looking at what the COVID crisis has brought out, like the concept of mutual aid, I think is so powerful, is because the institutions are not providing. And mutual aid is this concept, it's an anarchist concept, actually. We think about anarchism as just all this free-for-all. No, it's a very powerful idea. We support each other. We do it together.
Actually, I'm an anarchist at heart, like, you know.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, I'm just like, you know, not everybody thinks anarchy is
No, I know. I mean, we as a greater culture. I definitely don't think that way.
I wouldn't assume that, actually. I mean, you know, there's a lot. I mean, well, one can, you know, argue like sort of libertarianism, the extremes. I mean, that goes towards anarchy too. I mean, like, you know, that could be a very complicated conversation in terms. And there's a lot of people that function as anarchists, even though they don't call themselves that.
Well, we all should be careful what we call ourselves until after this election, you know? Because I'm sure like a light came on, like,
I'm gonna call myself Fay like I always do.
Right. So, you know, they said it, not me, you know?
No, but I mean, just
I'm joking. I'm joking,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But just the concept of something like that.
I mean, I would actually argue that Americans have more issue with the word socialism than anarchy.
Right. Yeah.
So now anarchy's become a bad word. From Trump and
But he's not anarchist. Okay, I'm not even. He's
Never mind.
He's an egoist.
I'm going to interrupt because basically you've really gotten into the second question a lot. And I'm just going to read it out loud. You really discussed it. But I got really specific, and you don't have to deal with it all. But I said the majority of the bands that you observe white-led. And you kind of alluded to that, some of you. And what is the history behind this, and what is the What is really the role of the universities in this, or the press, or media? In other words, why? But
Well,
that you've been dealing with this in what you've been saying in many ways already, but go ahead.
well, I was thinking, it's funny when Eddie Van Halen just passed away.
Right.
I didn't really think of when he was alive. I mean, I knew he was a great guitar player, but it's Greg Tate brought it up in the Facebook. I saw it. It brought up something that I didn't know about Eddie Van Halen. His mother was Indonesian. He's like Asian and white, and they're also going on about how when the press talks about him, they never mention Jimi Hendrix, they never mention Howlin' Wolf, they never mention the roots of the music that he's playing at all. They just completely whitewashed it, and that's what I was thinking about when I saw your question, because it's so deeply entrenched in the structure, especially of white people. It was one time when I was in school, when I was, because I went to college very late, and it was actually, it's funny, it was an American history class, well, American sociology, and the instructor, actually, it's funny because he was Asian and he was brought up by a white family, and he was very open about that. And he just came out to us one day, because he's talking about a lot of contemporary subjects. He said, now, class, what is it? Why are they so fascinated with black musicians? And I just sat there for a second, and there was a pause. And then, people were, they didn't really have an answer. So I finally said, well, it could be, it could have something to do with that, the forms of music that have evolved here in the United States and around the whole hemisphere has been based pretty much on black music. And the whole class, you could hear a gasp from this. What are you talking about? That's not true. And it's so deeply embedded in people that, it's like, even with, I mean, everything we do is putting down color. I mean, even when we speak to one another, like in the summertime, I get darker than I usually am, and people will come, white people come to me, black people come to me, brown people come and say, "Oh God, you look so dark," and they're not saying it in a good way. I'm like, what has that got to do with anything? But that, when you say it, that's one reason why I play with my own bands, because especially here in Connecticut, that's the law. Pretty much. I mean, it's a little less now, but that's pretty much what's happening. So you just made me think about it, and I think Eddie Van Halen is a perfect example of that. A perfect example.
Someone else? That's great.
I'll speak on. I'm not afraid. I mean, not that anyone else is afraid.
Thank you.
I don't have a problem with white-led bands. I get it.
Absorb.
Hey, it's like if you go into the yard of any, God forbid, you in that situation, you go into the yard of a penitentiary, you're going to go to people that look like you. You ain't gonna just go up to somebody and say, "Hey guys, here I am." They're not gonna take you. So it's a sense of it's every community and culture has tribalism. That never bothered me. I get it. You wanna deal with people, and it's an automatic icebreaker if you have this in common, because you have certain experiences in common. In terms of the financial aspect of it, I mean, whose face is on the money? I mean, hey, we hear it all the time. He or she or they are a success because they crossed over. Crossover means pop America, which the people who have the money is the majority of our white brothers and sisters have the money. When our white brothers and sisters like us, that's when we make a good living. That's when we make a money. So that's it never tripped me out. It's just something that's no one's fault. That's the system of capitalism. You know what I mean? So I get it. I have a band. I have a white bass player and a white drummer, and we have very open conversations. And I hired them because they're great musicians, you know, and they do the work. But I'll hire anyone that can play. And it doesn't mean I'm a great person. It's just, you know, it's hard to find people that can commit to learning music by heart. But a white-led band never messed with me. Now there is a saying, I used to hear this a lot, you know, white cats would play with the brothers, and then when they get a chance, they gonna hire their own. But I understand that. That's tribalism. We invite everybody to the picnic. That's just our culture, you know. Bill Clinton got a saxophone, and we was like, we love Bill Clinton. He's the first black president. And that's not the case. He made more prisons than anybody. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I kind of, I mean, I've always had integrated bands from the beginning, and I don't see anything wrong with white people having their own bands. I kind of agree with JD on that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. What I do have a little problem with is when white jazz groups or white you know, sort of white groups that are sort of deriving their whole flavor from black music, when they get more centered, like in the press, or when they get more attention in the press, that I have a little bit of a problem with. And I know that's business and politics, and there's nothing I can do about that, but I really do have a problem with that. Another thing I have a little bit of problem with, that now we're on that subject, is, and this I have seen it to be a tendency of white groups more so than any other, is a tendency to, let's say, go to Cuba for 3 weeks and then come back and make a Cuban record.
Oh, yes. Ooh, the number of white dudes with man buns playing tablas in my life.
Like,
wow.
and I talk about that a lot, and I was like, because if I were to go to like Eisenach and to hang in Eisenach where Bach was born for 3 weeks and come back and say I'm writing a piece about Bach.
Expert.
What do you think was going to happen to me? What do you think people were going to say, right? If I tamper with that in that way. So I have a little bit of a problem with that too. And it's usually, those tend to be white-centered projects or groups.
Yeah, sorry, Patricia, did you want to add?
No, I was going to clarify my question, but go ahead, Amirtha.
I just, it's interesting. So, you know, I think about this sort of, there's this black-white culture paradigm in America, and sort of the growing up kind of in between that, and obviously being, you know, just by default part of white culture, and exploring and being, you know, deeply indebted to black culture, and absolutely in the music I make, and not just the music, the thought behind it and the philosophy behind it has been hugely influential. And sort of being in a community like New York and thinking about race in terms of bands and who we work with, and there's sort of this weird position of being Indian there's one position where it's like, oh, you're neutral, or you're like safer than, like, it may be a white musician or a white person thinks, you know, there's, because of the perpetuation of something like the model minority myth, like, oh, that's, you know, that, like, yeah, we could add some color, but she's neutral or safe or something like that. Then the other thing that happens, which is the flip side of that, is let's add that color because it's exotic and mysterious and Eastern and spicy, you know, and it's this weird, you're either neutralized, invisible, or exoticized, and you can play to your advantage the neutral or the invisible. You can actually play to your advantage the model minority myth. You can, you know, because you can move through institutions that way. My family's Brahmin. I've been thinking a lot about Brahmanism and caste and color, because we talk about colorism, talk about people saying, "Oh no, you look so dark." God, I don't know how many times I heard that in my community. Really terrible. Like, and myself, like, if I would, you know, have a summer where I was playing outside a lot, and then I would see a relative and say, "Oh no, you look so dark." And there's a word in our language where it's like a biting word. It's bad. And so I think about, like, when I got in the position to start hiring people, which was not that long ago, thinking very deeply about what does it mean identity to be in a group with people. And this was just my own personal thought about this was, one, I don't want to butcher the Toni Morrison quote, but it's something I think about a lot, is if you have the position, if you are in a position of power, it's your responsibility to share that power or to empower someone else. That's kind of more the gist of the quote. So one is kind of thinking about if I have a little scrap and if I can hire a young musician and especially a person of color, I do think it's important to think very clearly in terms of race and think like, yeah, let's do that. Let's think about representation in my group. Like, I just want to think about that, and also just that it makes the music better. Like, if I'm just going to play with all white musicians, or if I'm going to just have a group with all Indian musicians, which I've never done, and maybe I should, maybe that would be very deep, I don't know. But everybody, at least half of what we do as musicians is the conversation after the gig, is the conversation in the van, is the conversation at 2 a.m, wandering some city on tour. And that richness goes into the music. And when everybody is of different backgrounds, and I don't think it's a problem to also share cultural affinities with people from your own background, but I've gained and from the experience of sharing with people coming from different places, whether it's mixed gender bands or different racial backgrounds. To me, it's also very important, like having grown up and seeing very few examples of people who look like me in any kind of cultural sphere. I mean, unfortunately, it was just Vijay. That's the only person I ever saw. That was literally, it was MIA. When I was in college, I saw MIA. That was the first person I saw. Aziz Ansari and Vijay Iyer. When I was in college, they all kind of became bigger in the cultural sphere, and it was almost like I didn't believe it was possible until I saw it. So I think in that sense, representation is important, and in my own little universe, I try to think about that. If I get a chance to put a group together or do something, then yeah, I do want to think about that. I don't think it's a problem to have an all black band. I actually do think it's a bit of a problem to have an all white band in this music. I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. Maybe because of the power dynamic of the whitewashing of the history and that a lot of the, just the prime example of the original Dixieland jazz band, they made the money off of it, and that imbalance has never gone away. And so that's why if I see that still, it's like, it's that history is there. And so, yeah, it's still problematic to me, I guess.
I'm gonna, for a second, can I just, or do you?
Well, no, just very quickly. I think what you meant by a question, I could be wrong, is because, I hire white people and have a white person playing with me in my band now. But the thing about it is, you said white led, and I think that's why are there so few black quarterbacks? Why are there so hardly any owners of major league teams who are black, even though black people and brown people make up the bulk of the teams? And it's, I think we've all gone past that point of overt racism, but the simple fact remains that there are many places that they're not going to let you get through unless you have a white person at the helm. And that's really what we have to deal with, I think, because especially jazz musicians, pretty much we're past that for the most part.
Yeah, thank you, Mixashawn. That was much more where I was getting at, although everything that everyone said is important and relevant.
Sure.
But the other thing, it's not just, it's all right. For example, as in my role as an organizer, I mean, I've been looking at the issue, everything Arts Fair has done has been built on trying to deal with the lack of diversity in the music. This is, when we started in 96 was the first Vision Festival. I did other things before, but the first Vision Festival was 96. And there wasn't anywhere to play this music in America, but in general, the kind of free, open stuff. And, but also if you looked at Downbeat covers, everything, you know, Coltrane, the new Coltrane was always all white. The new this was all white. And I kept on, and everyone they were excited about tended to be white or more mainstream. And it was like, and I said, we need, and especially in anything experimental didn't belong to, it was being taken away. That's how I observed it. And I remember like an early festival that like William Parker played in, and I thought, well, this is fairly balanced. And I looked back at it, and it was, first of all the white led bands were, I think 90% all white. And the black led bands were not all black. The black led bands were diverse, and the white led bands were not diverse. Just saying. And that tends to still be true. I mean, it's interesting. Oh, I work with mixed bands, but they're all people of color, but not as many of the white musicians can say. And then now they will say it's the huge, and it is at the time that that there are enough black musicians. But then why aren't there enough black musicians? So then you look at where they're getting their musical education and who has access to that music.
Something's happening with the audio.
Sounds, yeah.
I'll mute myself from there, let someone else talk, and it'll go away.
I was just, something that Mixashawn said was really powerful, is this idea of white ownership. And so thinking about who generally holds power and who has the purse strings, like even in our industry, it's like, well, who owns the record labels? Even my the record label that put out my band, it's completely white. I told them, I was like, I don't want to be on this label anymore unless you have some other people that you're going to be working with, or the festivals, or the deans of the schools, or the promoters. I mean, yeah, or the editors of the magazines. Every single jazz magazine, every single one is a white editor that I know of. I hope there are others, but that I don't know of. But it's at the top, and that is going to keep perpetuating the same thing until those roles change, or until completely other institutions are started by, Black people and people of color. But having the capital to do it, and having the economic security to start a magazine or to start an institution, is something that, that wealth has to be built up generation by generation, and that's the problem.
I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to tell me who to hire. See, that's why I would never say, I can't get mad at someone for having a all anything kind of band. You could have an all green band. I mean, I play with my eyes closed, but I understand what you're saying, Patricia, about what sells and what gets on the cover of magazines, and what, that there, and critics also, some of them have agendas. There's a narrative that is in place, and so I do acknowledge that. But in terms of the musicians, the only thing that I would like, is people are socially aware. But I expect that out of my culture also. I mean, I don't like when I meet brothers and sisters and all they know about is their own problems, or act as if we're the only group of people who've gone through things. I mean, there's a situation in Belarus right now where they're fighting for their type of freedoms. You know, there's a situation in Poland where they got a right-wing dictator there also. And even Australia had a bout with that. You know, this is a world, this is a worldwide thing. And then let's don't even get into like people who've been oppressed. We're not the only ones. So I ask that of people that look like me, I would hope that they're socially aware. And if you're a creative person such as we are, I would hope that you're globally socially aware, because we draw from many things to do our art form. At least I like to think that. But if someone told me that I had to have 2 black guys or 2 black women or 2 they or whatever you want to call yourself, I would not like that. So, you know, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you make a story with the people that you can make a story with. You know, we have to deal in a world where it's diverse, because in our world, at least in my opinion, there is no money. The money is in the white community. So we have to be diverse to a certain degree. We're forced to do that just to survive, especially in the creative field that we're in. You know, so our white brothers and sisters, they or whomever, how they address themselves, there's more of a financial buttress under them so they can make a decision. But we have to deal somehow, some way with that other world in order to have some type of success. So our plight is much different, you know. So, but like, again, I have no problems with, I mean, I love the Ramones. They were all white cats in the Ramones.
Yeah.
I playing 90 Seconds hardcore. I was like, checking that out. You know, now, I didn't care if there was black. That's just me. You know what I mean? It's like, I try to listen to a lot of things that got nothing to do with my culture. You know what I mean? But I like that diversity. I think the world is.
First punk group was an African-American group, I think.
The what?
The first punk group?
Yeah, it's from Detroit. I mean, yeah, I understand that. I know exactly where it's from. You know, it's from Detroit. That's cool. But I'm saying when you get into the media aspect of it, the media's purpose is to control a certain narrative. That's different.
Right.
That's a whole nother ball game right there.
I wasn't suggesting actually that anyone change who they hire necessarily. What I was pointing out is that it is this way. And then I would like to actually draw it together with the education element.
Okay.
Because I consider it, all right, as an organizer, I consider it my responsibility to look for young African-American musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I give them opportunities, then that's a way in for them. We do education, like we can have, I'm trying to start various education projects, and then, you know, and some of that will be, you know, paid, some will be volunteered, because this is such a giant problem.
Yeah.
But there's also who you support. Like there's ways like if you want to like make sure to bring up someone younger, it's a way of teaching also. It's just, and I'm not saying what you should do. I'm really not talking to you in that direct way or to anyone in a direct way. I'm just saying these are opportunities that we all can explore. And like, there are things that we can do rather than just talk about. We can do these things. And and I think that the universities are a big problem, but that's my opinion.
No,
Yeah.
You know,
I'm probably shooting myself in the foot by saying agree, but you're right. Yeah, it's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean we can't solve it. We can solve problems. That's
from the little I know, and whoever it seems to be I felt like when I lived in Europe, it was similar, and I feel with a lot of universities here, is that the way the jazz curriculum is organized, it's really about the components of the music, and which is very important. You know, the components. You know, how harmony, all that, and it's related to Western harmony. You know, European harmony, European-based harmony, and it's not a lot of discussion about the real things that make up the essence of the music and the social interact. You know, the social aspects of this music, and the painful history. I mean, you know, the entire history that this music, you know, is about referencing, you know. And I'm also talking I'm also talking about the blues. So it's just not talked about in that way. I mean, they talk about the blues, it comes up, but it's like it's isolated. And in the conversations I've been having around this, and I can't get into with who, whatever, but you know, just that should come first. That should be the foundation of everything. And then talk about how you know, European harmony is related to that, and it should really be, because this music is a very different thing. And I'll say that, you know, and I didn't realize it until very recently, but when I lived in Europe, a lot of Europeans would make comments about my expression. You know, I've already shared that I'm a bit of a fighter, so I could deal with that. But I did internalize them, because it was really strange. And I realized that the reason that they would make comments about the expression is because a lot of people didn't really realize that the expression was authentic to the music, because they had never really heard it that way, and it wasn't taught to them that way. No one ever said, you know, all these kind of different sounds. You know, I'm talking like feel how, you know, coming like sort of okay, that was not. I would do those sorts of things, and people would look at me, you know, that's not jazz. That's not. Yes, it is. You know, so it's like, but it's part of this. It's just a part of the mentality, and then, you know, you know, white supremacist mentality is like, you know, if they say it's not true, then it's not true. You know, right? You know, but it's true. So
I never would have gotten to this music had someone had not introduced Albert Ayler to me. That was my thing. You know what? They said, look, you can express. I mean, I was really angry as a kid, as I'm sure a lot of people was. And not to say that Albert Ayler is angry, but when I heard that, it was not about the 12 tones. It was all about expression and having an outlet to express yourself. That's why I think this community is so important. And the alliances that need to be made, that we let people separate us and say, we're this, we're that. If you're swinging, you ain't. And I say ideology has to be put to the side, and the complete culture needs to be into play, because that's what got me into playing creative music. When James Carter was like, yo, check out Frank Lowe. And I was like, yo, I was about that. I was like, all the way. Like, that's how I felt at that time. As I got older, the nuances came into play. And when I met Frank Lowe and Julius Hemphill and a lot of cats, it was a whole nother thing to it. But I'm saying, initially, a kid from the hood was like, yo, I'm not gonna, and it's not to say that we can't have an intellectual aspect of it, but it's just another form of intellectualism to play, and it grabbed me. I think that's what will bring more of us into this. You know what I mean? I say that to add on to what you're saying, Faye, like, what is jazz is an issue, and now that it's being basically taught in the form of a conservatory music stand type, learn this, transcribe that, your thing needs to go out the way. You know, I'm not saying don't check out people, but it's more of the access element. I don't think I would have got into it. I got into it by that way. Right. So that's where my affinity is. And I think in terms of education, that's what I mean, talk is cheap. I think we can bring that into communities, and people would love that, to be able to express yourself. I don't care about, like, I'm gonna take this instrument and I'm gonna make a sound, you know? Like that's what got me into it, you know? And I'm not special. I'm not a special person. I'm sure we get somebody else into it. Like, and if you want to go into that route where you shape it this way, cool, you can.
Yeah.
We had a program in Detroit by James Carter's teacher. It was called Bird Train School Now. Now, I never got a chance to meet Mr. Washington, but I met a lot of his students. And their philosophy was Bird, Coltrane, and Roscoe Mitchell, that whole thing. And all of that was one, it was equal. It was I didn't know what the difference was until I got to New York. They told me don't go downtown. Those cats don't play. I was like, if you want to make some money, I was like, okay, but that in Detroit at the time when I was coming up, the jam sessions would be bebop to no changes. That was what I thought jazz was till I got to New York. Wow. But that's what got me interested. It was the universe. You know what I mean? So education, I think, and it's not to say that our children anywhere in the world, black, white, poor people, it's not to say that poor people can't learn that way. But I just think the factor where your feelings come into play first, I think that's been taken out, and that's what makes it less attractive. I think that's one of the issues that we're dealing with. That doesn't bring younger people in. You know?
Yeah, but if I could just say one thing though, that program in Detroit sounds amazing. But I think we've been talking a lot about systems. Bertha has mentioned systems, and I think the academy is a system. And the academy is, for some are better than others, but it's a white supremacist system. And so things that come into it are going to have that lens, and it's going to be a lot of work to change it, right? So that's just...
how about we don't change it? We just have an alternate universe.
Well, right, but it's just an acknowledgement that that's just it's a lot, and to change people's minds and to get people to see your the whole thing. But but like you said, but we have to be I keep saying, I know I keep going back to that, but it's like that ownership of I love that you mentioned that Albert Ayler was what got you in. I mean, for me, what got me in, it wasn't Albert Ayler, it was Ella Fitzgerald, but the mentality was the same. It was the reality, this is a music where I can actually express myself.
Yeah.
That was mind-blowing. That was literally blew my mind. That they literally existed in music when the whole point was personal expression in communion with others. Yeah. So that's mine. And to me, that's why I think jazz is anti-capitalist. It's all the ideals about it are just are really anti-capitalist, because it's about deeper understanding and about doing it together. I mean, yeah, you can make, there's a lot of solo records, but they ain't that many, right?
Yeah, yes.
So it's just it's your personal expression in communion with other people's personal expression and listening, so it comes together.
That's the powerful thing. It's the best.
I think William's waiting to speak.
Sorry, William.
I was just going to say that if you go to New Orleans, and I went to a birthday party, Kid Jordan took me to someone's 90th birthday party, and in the family, you had people white as snow and darker than coal. They were all related. They were all in the same family. And they were all hugging each other. They were all comparing, my gumbo's better than yours. My rice and beans is better. But there was no separation. And I think one of the things that's failed us, the people, is that the black people with money, and I'm talking about Quincy Jones and these people who could have done something, didn't do anything. And what I mean by that is that it was a point when, Oprah had on her, Oprah Winfrey, she says, oh, I can't go any further than Lionel Richie. I don't like jazz. I can't go.
Lionel Richie with the Commodores?
Yeah. She said, the most I can take is Lionel Richie. But the thing about it is...
just Lionel Richie, not the Commodores. All right.
Well...
After the Commodores.
All right.
So the idea of, so Beaver Harris we have to have this group called 360 Degrees Experience, from ragtime to no time. And it's another arc that if you're playing black music, it could be anything from the blues hollers to the most fur out electronic music that you're playing. But also under that would be music from India would be the indigenous music, because people forget about, when I read about, how Gayo Geronimo was a great composer. Also Sitting Bull, great composers. All
Wow.
of Link Ray, the guitar player, the Shawnee, he was influenced Jimi Hendrix and a lot of the rock guitar players. So it was a big family, and we're all together. And the thing is that when pop music came in, then all they remember is pop music. The BET Awards, the Ebony Awards, they never, I mean, right now, Marshall Allen is, I said this a million times, but he's 97, 96 years old. So when is the NAACP going to say, Marshall, it's Marshall Allen Day, or the Ebony Awards, or the BET? Isn't Marshall Allen? I know he's a little red, but he's still black.
Hey, he probably outlive us all.
So why is like just one segment? See, they only consider things that make money important. And that's where they've let all the black kids down, because they're keeping this rich culture. I mean, have you checked out what Cardi B did, her latest thing? Anybody check?
Wow.
Yeah.
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 I've seen the video, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're pushing stuff like that.
I like it though.
I kind of like it too.
I think it has its own place.
I like Cardi B.
I like Cardi B too.
But see, I'm saying it's not whether we like Cardi. If Cardi B came to the picnic, come on, Cardi
Yeah,
B.
she might.
She might actually. Like that's the thing. She actually might. She actually might. I mean, look. You remember Outkast? He came. Andre 3000. He came to
Andre's
the
hit.
festival.
He's hit. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that basically we have been separated as over there, and it's keeping the people from knowing about the full range of their culture.
Yeah, because money is power. When you make money, you're that's everything.
Yeah.
The music is about money. Is the food is fast money. Everything is about. That's just capitalism.
Yeah, but
that's the power of capitalism.
Yeah, that's this country though.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really
not
this
that
country.
I accept it. I don't accept
That's
it.
really this country, because that's
When I played with Cecil Taylor, Cecil would listen to Tito Puente, Marvin Gaye, James Brown, listen to the opera, listen to Messiaen, listen to Billie Holiday, all in the same breath. It wasn't like every so-called jazz musician I know, they like it all. They know about it all. Yeah. And it's just not reciprocal. I don't find it reciprocal, because, and this is the last thing I'll say, because I know it's getting late, it's 9:35, was doing a gig with the Roots at the Knitting Factory, right? So we're all in the dressing room. It was me, Craig Harris, and Roy Campbell were guests with the Roots. And so there were a lot of rappers there. And so Craig said, hey, man, why don't y'all use some, to this rap guy, I don't know who he was, said, why don't y'all use some real instruments? Use some real instruments on the instruments, And the guy said, come here, look out there. You see that? And he had a brand new BMW outside.
Ooh, yeah.
That's mine. Where's yours?
Jeez.
So like all, like where's yours? Money speaks to us, nothing else.
Well, that's not our fault.
No, it's what many of us know.
Hey, I
yeah, but you don't have to be material.
That ain't our fault.
You have a choice in being materialistic.
I agree with you, Mixashawn. Absolutely. We all have a choice.
And put a jacuzzi in the back of your Hummer.
Do we really have a choice?
We do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I think we do. We do.
Yeah.
You live different. You live differently.
I mean, it's I've talked about this a lot with people, but I was actually raised. I'm like from like kind of middle class background, nothing special, but I was raised that like there's no shame in being poor. Like it was just not like I had a life lesson like when I was a kid. Me and my sister made fun of somebody because we thought they were poor, and my mother actually didn't like the person. And my mother heard us, and we got into the most trouble I ever remember getting into as a kid. It's like you don't ever make fun of anybody for when you think they don't have. Like it's just not. So so there's no shame in if people don't have. What's wrong? That's no one's. That's like. I mean, we talk about compassion and empathy, right? People don't have because they don't have. So there's nothing wrong with that, right? The earth is bountiful if if a few people didn't want to take so much of it, honestly. And I know we were talking about Europe before. I'll just say this: the years I lived in Europe, because living in a social democracy where you don't have to make a lot of money to have a good quality of life, and then you can focus on your art because you're not having to worry about being thrown out on the street. I mean, look at I just keeping it real. Look at the pandemic. Look at the countries who've halted their economies and continue to pay their citizens. Look at how those economies are doing now. So I mean, like if we're talking about changing systems, that's also a system to look at.
Yes.
Because it's not working. We don't have to. We do not have to buy a BMW. I'm sorry.
No, it's not about that.
No, but I'm just saying, like, it's just, or feel like.
We can't rely, I think somebody said this earlier, is that we can't rely on people.
No.
Outside of ourselves. If all possible, we have to go to with however little it is. If we got a class of 3 kids or 4 kids, that class is like represents all the kids in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we give it our all, and because if we rely on people to rescue us, we'll still be sitting there waiting for the bus, and
I agree.
it'll never come. So we have to,
Absolutely.
I think everybody said this in some form or another. We have to get up off our bootstraps, and we're doing it.
And we'll do more. We can do more if we don't buy that BMW.
And to that, I love the Martin Luther King "After I Have a Dream" when he speaks about the bootstrap, and that's why I said that. Do we really have a choice? When right before he did the Poor People's March, there's a great speech where he talks about where we're being told you need to pull yourself up by the bootstrap. And I'm not saying that we don't have a say in this. I'm saying that if you live in a community that has food deserts, where the only type of nutritional value you get in your community that you eat is garbage, that affects you mentally.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Or the type, or if you're coming from 2 generations from a grandparent or a great grandparent who was on drugs, crack, that affected us. And I'm saying, yeah, I get mad too when I go into some places, but I have to say, like, some people, everybody didn't make it to Canaan. I mean, that's just a fact. But to what William said, that if it's 3 or 4 in the classroom, we should treat those 3 or 4 youths as if they are the world, because that's what it's going to take. So everybody ain't gonna make it. It's just something you gotta accept.
But I just want to sort of clarify something. When I say that, like, we don't have to be materialistic. That's that's basically. Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, that's what I mean. We don't have to be materialistic.
Yeah.
We need money to live and survive. That's obvious, and we have been as communities, like really neglected and just for racism, systemic racism, redlining, all sorts of systems. Again, a bunch of systems that have made sure that we don't have the generational wealth that white communities have. That I understand that, but we still don't have to be materialistic.
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
That's
I
all.
mean, I think we're all evidence of that. we ain't talking, we doing.
We made our choice. Okay, Patricia's waving her hands.
Okay.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
This is a great conversation, and I'm wondering if we should just sort of stop for now, and we only got through 2 questions.
Oh wow, okay.
Would you like to? We could keep going, or would you like to reconvene? And we can.
Oh, it's up to everybody else, however you want to do.
People are not going to be able to stay much longer and listen. Although, like someone said, I've been streaming this in an empty library. I've got to close up now. It's tough to leave. It's so great.
I think to be continued sounds good.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with that.
All right, so
Well,
let's.
it was great to see everybody.
Yeah, I will email you another time to gather, probably in next week. And we'll continue.
Yeah, I wanted to hear Arturo's take on some stuff, but
I
I guess he
know.
couldn't make it. I was really curious as
So yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to
to
hear
where he
it.
was going to come
We
in.
all do. I'll tell him we all missed him, and he better show up the next time. Blah blah blah. What did it say? A lot of just everyone loved it. On oh, who you are. Love that, Fay. David Coiter, we're in a war. Rex Gaskins, and not go to Europe. Stay in your neighborhood for short term at least. Syndico anarchist.
That was the Move group in Philadelphia were Syndico anarchists.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Live chat, but
Yeah, and that.
thanks. Thank you, Patricia, for gathering this great group. And I know I haven't met everybody in person. Mixashawn, nice to meet you. I've heard you play, and I'm just honored because it's a privilege to even get to be in the room, so to speak, and hear everybody's perspective and from all the experience everyone has. So really, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to see everyone and meet new friends. And Mixashawn, I love you, cuz.
You know that.
See you, man. But we family, so great to see you.
You know how we do.
Oh, you know it, baby. And Patricia, thank you so much. Faye, great to see you.
Great to
Mr.
see you
Parker.
too, JD. Thank you so much, Patricia, for asking.
Yeah, let's keep it going. Offline, and so I would love to talk with you and get your insight, Mr. Parker, on what you did for guys did for doing your own festivals, and so I hope we can all talk at some point, and how we can work together on things.
We'll do more live because I think it's really important, and we will also convene privately.
Great. Everybody stay safe, don't get shot, stay healthy.
Really, yes. Yeah. God bless everybody. Love you all.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Patricia.
Good to see
Ciao.
everybody. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Bye, Faye.
Bye.
Bye.
I can't try to get out of here. Oh, there it is. Bye.